busy at the moment because of everything going on politically. But Isaac, we won't talk about politics today, will we?
No. I've got in the green room. We were just talking about one of the future talking leaders, which is from Twickenham. So very excited about that. And we found out that Ben is, despite from being from Yorkshire, is a rugby union man. So
Ben, we didn't ask you, who's your team?
Well, we've two teams in the north, Sale Sharks and Newcastle Falcons. But Sale Sharks, I've had an association with over the years. So yeah, I keep an eye on them. But I'm hoping that what was Leeds Tykes will rise again. But we shall see.
Okay, and presumably, are you going to follow the Lions tour when we go live with that?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much so. It would be nice to be over there supporting live, but not this time.
Okay, and Ben, if we were going to make you an international player and you were going to play for the Lions for the bulk of the matches, what position would you play, please, Ben?
Well, I used to play many years ago. I used to play hooker, and I thoroughly enjoyed that position, having dabbled with others. So if I could find the strength, then that would be my position.
Ben, I love that. Isaac, did you see that? I could just see Ben's eyes down the line glisten to everyone on the podcast. You just see Ben stood up in his chair. I'm a hooker. I'm proud to be a hooker. Okay. Right, everyone, we were just waiting for the social media lights to all go green. They have now gone green. I'll introduce myself. My name is Max McGillivray from Beanstalk Global. Isaac, could you introduce yourself? Introduce AHDB Talking Leaders and just give a quick per se about Ben, please. Isaac, over to you.
Thank you, Max. And yes, so I work for AHDB. My name is Isaac Van Heerden. As AHDB, we're a levy-funded organization working on behalf of farmers. We help facilitate exports. We provide market access. We provide market analysis and intelligence. We do farmer-to-farmer knowledge exchange. We look at consumer trends, so all of those kind of things. We do some marketing campaigns both here and internationally. We've recently, talking about rugby there, teamed up with Bucks, which is the university sports. It's an umbrella organization, so had a really good campaign there around milk. And we engage with schools and all sorts of things like that. So do an awful lot around for farmers. The bit that I'm involved with is something called AgriLeader. So for that, we look at the people side of businesses. So helping some farmers better lead themselves, better lead their people, and better lead their business. And this Talking Leaders series is part of that. So looking at what we can learn from sometimes inside, sometimes outside of the industry. And today we've got Ben Hirst. I met Ben through a mutual friend of ours. Ben went to school with Tom. And used Bennett a couple of times with some dairy groups and thought he's so good, we better get him on here. So, yeah, Ben, very welcome.
Thank you very much, Isaac. Great to be here.
Ben, I'm just going to steal the conversation, if it's okay, for the people on the podcast, just so I can set the scene. So let's just give a bit of a background as to Ben and as to why we've got him on, because I think what Isaac and Isaac's colleague Mark does in the respect of bringing people like yourself on, Ben, is very, very, very inspired. So Ben Hirst, he's an experienced managing director and CEO with a track record of founding, scaling, and successfully exiting a high-performing business in the equipment rental sector. He's also a non-exec director and chair with a passion for supporting value-led organizations as they grow, transition ownership, or professionalize operations. And you just think of what we need within the farming sector. And again, that's why we're really keen to get Ben on. In 2008, he founded Horizon Platforms and led it through every phase of growth, from startup to national brand, culminating in a strategic transition to employee ownership. So Ben, love to hear about that. Under his leadership, Horizon achieved record revenues, operational excellence, and industry recognition, all while staying true to its people-first culture. He stepped down as CEO in 2023 and continues to support the business as chair. Since then, he has built a portfolio career focused on helping ambitious, founder-led or family-owned businesses evolve, often following periods of rapid growth or as they navigate succession. At Bell Lightning, as an example, a fourth-generation manufacturing business, he was brought in to chair the board and help retain cultural identity whilst professionalising governance and strategy. So Ben, as we were talking in the green room, and I'm going to make no apologies for this. I think sometimes within the farming sectors we can be very myopic in our thinking, and so to have people like you coming in, and I use this expression of a critical friend. So it's not someone who's looking to degrade you or be negative about your business, but to see something that might be very obvious to someone, a professional like Ben, as to where there might be a quick fit solution or a solution for the long term, and to be able to take your business through to the next level. Isaac, would you agree? Is that what we're looking to get from Ben today, do you think?
Very much, and I think it is, like I said previously, that's what Talking Leaders are all about, is just getting that outside opinion. Actually, way back, since we did some analysis of farming accounts, and some farmers that were part of a discussion group had that external input, or somebody else looking. They were this was in dairy, and they were 1 to 2 pence per litre more profitable. So just having other people look at your business, or some looking at how other people do it, and some Talking Leaders with people like Ben is one step on from that. So yeah, very much looking forward to some chatting to Ben today. So we start. So Ben, tell us a bit more about those early days. And I've heard the story before and found it very interesting. But and how did you start ups, and how did Horizon Platforms came about?
Thanks, Isaac. Yeah, so I'll have spent over 25 years now in and around the construction and facilities maintenance supply chain, largely, as you mentioned, within the equipment rental space, and specifically hiring out these things called access platforms, scissor lifts and cherry pickers. So 2003 to 2006, I worked for a business called Uplift Platforms. Uplift was eventually sold to a national supplier, private equity-backed national supplier. At that point in time, I had some share options. Cashing in those share options gave me just enough money to invest by way of loans and share capital in starting my own business, as mentioned earlier, in 2008. And early days. I mean, I'm guessing most of the listeners of this podcast will recognise the long hours required in any small business. But yeah, my average day for the first 12 months was out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning and out doing the delivering myself, along with the guy I started the business with, up until maybe 9 o'clock, home, change, shower, and then out promoting the business, knocking on doors, selling, trying to attract more customers, till 4 p.m. And then it was the jeans back on, rigger boots back on, hook up the trailer and go and collect the access platforms required for the following day. There was then the service process, the cleaning process, the administration of the contracts. So yeah, really touching every part of the business every day. And I was lucky if I was home before 10, 11 o'clock to try and get some sleep before doing it all again the following day. But great memories. The living off adrenaline alone, I think. Could I do it all again? Probably not. At 47, I've maybe not quite got that level of energy. But I look back with very fond memories to the start of Horizon Platforms.
And Ben, what was the catalyst for you looking to do your own thing? Because you could have worked for a similar business to the one that you worked for previously, and just become a wage slave. Why take the risk? Why put yourself through that stress? Why?
Good question. I mean, so number one, there was an opportunity. I've been very fortunate since starting my career. So I left school at 16, pursued an apprenticeship in a small tool and plant hire business, and quickly gained the qualifications and experience, and then moved into customer service, into sales, into management. But sat within an organisation that had a phenomenal culture in terms of customer service and just putting people at the forefront of everything that goes on in an organisation. And so dial back to my time with the company I mentioned earlier, Uplift Platforms. When that was sold to the national supplier, private equity backed, as I say, the initial murmurings were that the national company wanted to raise their standards of customer service to the ones that we were already delivering, to the level that we were already delivering. And it became quite apparent after just a short period of time that wasn't going to be the case. My phone was ringing off the hook with customer complaints. So wow. We were certainly falling short of existing customer expectations. And so much so, I booked a meeting with the guy that was their managing director at the time. And I voiced my concerns and reminded him of the claim that they were looking to raise standards of service and learn from us, in effect. And it was responded, or the guy responded by saying, "Look, Ben, it's about time you started managing the reduction in your customers' expectations." So that was the trigger. That was I went home that night and wrote my notice out, and left, knowing full well that there would be many dissatisfied customers, with team members that would be eager to move across to a business that I was involved in, and so. Having sat out of the industry, bound by a restrictive covenant for 12 months, I then quickly formed my own business. So there's a practical reason. There was a great opportunity, dissatisfied customers, team that were keen to follow me onto a new venture. But in terms of the risk, I came from a very modest background. Mum's a teacher, dad was a salesman. My mother was incredible and still is incredibly hardworking. My father was always very, very organised, hardworking, but never quite enjoyed working for anybody. Never found satisfaction from his work, and there was so I was keen to ensure that I did find satisfaction in my work. We're at work for too many hours, not to chase happiness. But again, I'm staying with my father. He wasn't the most encouraging of fathers. In fact, quite discouraging. I like to think there was some reverse psychology. But when I started to talk to him about my ideas of going alone, he was again discouraging. So there was a bit of me that I was right. I will prove you wrong, and that created this drive within me that lives with me today, and that's been in some ways helpful, but it needs to be managed.
Ben, I didn't expect the conversation to segue this way. You think of the younger generation now, that they could do as you've done, do an apprenticeship. They don't have to go to university. So much could be learnt online. There'll be a number of younger individuals who are watching this, who are in the farming sector, but don't have the prospect of owning a farm because they work on a farm or work in the supply sector. But they might have a similar scenario to you, that they're within a sector that they're rapidly becoming an expert in, and they potentially could do their own thing and become a Ben. Would you recommend that they investigate it? Would you recommend that they be curious to do their own thing? Because it's obviously a lot easier now to start a business now in the way of social media and all the elements of it. Would you recommend the younger generation look to duplicate what you did?
Yeah, absolutely. But it comes with a health warning. You've got to be asking yourself whether you're really willing to make the commitment from an hours spent contributing to the new business perspective, the emotional roller coaster that it takes you on, because not all days are good days. And clearly, you've got to be asking the question, I need to fund this. How's that going to come about? I look back on my career, and yes, I've been very fortunate. I've got lucky at points, but those points when luck arrived, such being awarded share options. I like to think that my contribution to the organisation, up to the point I was awarded those share options, was significant, and that award was therefore justified. But yeah, I mean, the flip side of that question is, would you be recommending that employers of great, young, talented, ambitious, hardworking people look to reward them in some way, shape, or form with some form of equity? And again, my answer there would be absolutely yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And we get some of that in farming, in share farming and contract farming agreements, and there are some great success stories. But I guess my question is, what would you look at, and how would you decide that, and what are some of the options that especially in your early days, we'll come onto the employees and ownership. But what on your early days, what are some of those options that you think, or some ideas for farming when they've got talented youngsters?
Yeah, I mean, forgive me, I'm no tax expert, but there are numerous government-approved share option schemes. Which ones would best apply, be most appropriate to farming? I don't know, but essentially, I think in this day and age, people are more transient in terms of the world of work. Gone are the days where you'll see people retire in the company that they joined as an apprentice, and so when you do come across a superstar, I think it's important as an employer to figure out how to first and foremost properly reward that level of effort and commitment. But secondly, with your business hat firmly on, how do you retain that talent in a world that people want to move around typically, and that retention is not just about equity and financial reward. It can be about diversity of role, diversity of experiences, ensuring that there's a path that an individual can develop their career along. So yeah, there's a whole host of things to think about, but for sure it's worth trying to carve out time to have that proactive thought about the team that you've got, who they are, what they aspire to achieve as individuals, and how your business can or cannot cater for those aspirations.
Guys, can I just jump in? What's the stats? The gig economy, it is predicted that the average 18 to 22-year-old, by the time they retire, they could have upwards of 60 different jobs. So they could do 6 months as a contractor on social media, go travel for 3 months, come back, do 6 months on a similar project, and just move around on that basis, which is great for them, but it's also quite frightening in the respect of some fresh produce companies especially down in the southeast. They can't find individuals that want to work the long hours that we and everyone dialed in is working at the moment. So instead of having one person for one particular role, they're having to source 2 people working 35 hours and duplicating that setup, because that's the only solution that they can find. But then also where I'm based up in Suffolk, there's a local farm that does very well in attracting team members, because they'll put people through their tickets. So they'll put them through the forklift and help me, Ben.
The operator qualification, IPAF tickets. Yeah,
and it's in the grand scheme of things, it's like £1,400 for the 2 of them. But the fact that we are going to invest in you because we can see that you're good means that their retention of talent is so good. Whilst all the other farms are struggling because they don't want to spend that sort of money, which is very, very short-sighted. But it's very, very beneficial for you. Isaac, do you see similar things?
Definitely. So there's a dairy farm I know that they specialize in, and they accept that people are only going to stay for a couple of years or 3 years, and that's their business model. But they're happy to give that to the industry, and they keep on getting fresh talent, and they've actually now got a queue of people wanting to work there, which is unheard of. So yeah, investing in your people definitely pays off, I think.
If you build into that another statistic that I heard, that somebody that carries a fair level of experience in an organization will cost in a monetary value at something equal to a year and a half salary. Mm-hmm. If you account for cost of advertising, cost of recruitment, cost of time spent just managing the administration, the interviews, and then the lack of day one effectiveness through the induction period, that all comes to about a year and a half's worth of salary. So yeah, I mean, team retention, team engagement is something that, I've always believed in, but I think for any business leader, as we look to the future, it's just becoming more and more of a priority.
Yeah, Ben, who created the success for Horizon Platforms? You, or you and your team?
No, the team. I mean, yeah, it's I had an interesting. I've talked to Isaac about this previously. I would say we were 18 months in. We had a brilliant start. It was 2008, in September of 2008. We had the start of the financial crisis. For those who remember, Lehman Brothers hitting the skids, which was the trigger. And so many would say it was an awful time to start a business. But we were lean. Our costs well and truly in check. And for those who were competing against, they had to take cost out of their businesses, which caused chaos within them, and service levels fell. So when you're competing on service, not on price, it was very difficult, very very easy for us to compete. So we grew quickly, and about 18 months in, having, as I said earlier, been involved in every part of the business. It was me that was selling, washing, delivering the lot. I quickly recognised that that was impossible. I'm stating the obvious here, but and people needed to be in places to do that work, and essentially to create the value. So that therefore, where do I create value? And quite simply, it's helping them do their jobs really well. And so since that moment, I've always thought of if you think of a typical organisational chart, you've got the MD at the top, and then managers, and then just turn that upside down. I'm right at the bottom. My job is and always will be to help everybody else in the organisation, and especially those at the front line, do it easier, more efficiently, better than those we compete against, and that from a mindset perspective, I think helps you show up in your leadership job in a really healthy way.
Yeah, you realise you smile, and not just with your when you talk about your team, you're just resonating this positivity about your team. I think that's that's brilliant. Can I? So what would your advice be to? There's no such thing as a typical farm, but say a second generation farm, half a dozen team members. Some might be related, some might have been there for 30, 40 years, some might have only been there for 6 months. There's a couple of parents meandering around. It's not like starting I suppose that's the one advantage, Ben, in some ways, that you had with Horizon Platforms. It was a virgin business. You could shape it as you wanted. Every new day was a new day. But with farms, because it's always been done this way, it's really difficult to change things. Yeah, and you must have seen this with, I presume, with the likes of Bell Lighting. When you go into a business that's very set and set in the ways, what would be? But you've got one individual, you've got a son or a daughter who really wants to positively change things for the best. What would your advice be as to how you can create the success that you did with your team at Horizon Platforms? What would your advice be, please?
Can I jump in there? Because I've got a question here from James down here in Sussex. What would Ben say is the one thing that is needed to make the jump and put an idea into action? So I guess that ties in so your advice to that business owner, that farmer, and how do you change it?
So I'm cautioning myself not to coin management theory that's been so well covered by various different authors over the years, but for a team in an organization, and I would say regardless of the size of the organization, to understand what the ultimate purpose is of that organization is really important. And this is this is beyond growing crops, producing milk, hiring out access platforms, manufacturing light bulbs. It's well beyond that. It's what's the purpose of our organization? What do we all stand for? Why are we here? Yep. Beyond profits an outcome, the sale of our goods and services an outcome, but why we're showing up and why do we hold such passion? Why do we stick around in this business? And I think so figuring that out is job number one. That probably doesn't answer the question in terms of change, but it's linked to it, and hence I mentioned purpose, because whatever you change in the business should be linked to why the organization exists, and again, calling on more management theory, like where are we going? What is our direction of travel? And you can call it mission, you can call it long-term objectives, call it what you want. But I think for everybody in the organization to be able to visualize really clearly, like where are we going? And along that path, like why do we exist? It's the combination of the two. And then every bit of change should be that bit easier because it just makes sense. Yeah, all right, I can know why we're doing that because that contributes to where we're going. And so I think that it comes down to communication, and that takes time, it takes effort. Yes, it's the leader's job to set that vision, but the more involvement I think the leader can have or can receive from the team, the better, because then it becomes a shared vision. People buy into the purpose because they've contributed to it. So that's the starting point. I know that's very high level. There's lots of practical tips and hints around ensuring.
Give us some of that, because that is, so what you're talking about there is like music to my ears. But it's all great. You get some companies, some farms that and they write out an amazing aim or purpose on a piece of paper and put up against the wall. And yet, on the farm, in the company, they don't live those values and that mission. So how do you connect that vision with the people that work there?
No, well, this touches on your question, Max, as well. I think it's and please, I'm not saying I am or have ever been perfect at this, but on a day-to-day basis, displaying the kind of leadership behaviours that not only align with the values that you believe the company holds, but supports that direction of travel and supports the change that you believe as the leader is necessary to succeed and for the business to be sustainable is critical. And those behaviours have to be consistent, they have to be authentic. I remember conversations that I've had with my team who've thankfully been bold enough to be honest and offer me developmental feedback, shall we say, where they can the conversation like, well, Ben, I can tell you're in a bad mood, or I can tell you're feeling the pressure, you're feeling the stress, but I can see you putting on this facade. If you feel bad, just tell us, and we'll understand that because we have bad days too. So yeah, you can be displaying the right kind of leadership behaviours, but you can be inauthentic, and that doesn't work either. So I think you as a leader, just consistently showing up in the way that you want others to behave is critical. Because whether we like it or not, as leaders in the business, like we're just being watched. Mm-hmm. From the minute we walk through the door to the minute we leave at night, we're being observed, and people are taking people are being influenced by what they're seeing, what they hear. Even the most subtle elements of your body language, folk are picking up on it, and that's it puts a lot of pressure on you as a leader. But I think if you carry a level of consciousness about that, and perhaps periodically, and whether you do this formally through what's generally known as 360 feedback, or even informally with your team, by asking them, look, how am I doing? Because this is who I'm striving to be. Tell me about the gaps. What do I need to work on? that's that's a level of humility that I think will support any leader as well.
And guys, can we just we've got to break it out because I haven't used it for 3-4 episodes. The JFK example from 1958 when he was visiting NASA, and there's a chat with a mop, and JFK on the site tour said, "Young man, what do you do?" And with the chat with the mop said, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." And I think of other examples, like when I've visited a good friend of mine down in Somerset, we go to his local pub, and there was a very smart young man with a gilet with a dairy company on. My friend Neil said, "Go speak to this young man. He's very, very interesting." And he wasn't being egotistical about it. I said, Neil said I should introduce myself. What do you do? He said, "Oh, I work for one of the best dairy farms in the country. We've got the best sustainability. We've got the best herd." Ding, 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 ding. And it's exactly what you were saying, Ben, because he'd been indoctrinated is the wrong word, enthused, because he's got a leader like you, Ben, that he wants to better himself to better the farm, and he was sat in that pub and rightly so, very, very proud that he was working for one of, and what a great sort of radar. So Isaac, that's what we're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like Ben said, we spoke about it, but in the first time Ben talked about that upside down pyramid was just like a light bulb moment, kind of. People think, as a leader, you've got to be out there at the front and drag people along. Actually, so your job as a leader is to be there and catching, any balls that might be falling, and making sure that everybody can. So your job as a leader is to make sure they can deliver the best they can and enthuse them and make sure, so you make the world as easy as possible for them rather than the opposite. So I love that analogy of and how we can lead. Ben,
I think it's backed up as well. I mean, look at. If you bring football into it, since the departure of Alex Ferguson, Manchester United has not been the same, has it? Not produced the same results, and it's well known that Alex Ferguson was on first name terms with the cleaning team, and so it just doesn't surprise me that you lose a leader like that who really did put the people who create the value, those who are right up at the coalface, they're the people that are most important in any business. Yeah, and for a leader like Alex Ferguson, who made it his business to get to know those people and allow them people to get to know him, it's no surprise that club did so incredibly well for so long.
So Ben, here's the question: How do farming businesses create Alex Fergusons? Whether it be the next generation, or if they've got a key manager, and you've done this. We want to know your trade secrets. How do you create mercurial leaders like yourself? How can we learn?
Well, goodness, I mean, again, caveat it that I've still loads to learn. But I took my first management position when I was 19 years old. I was awful. I was just the worst of managers. I shouldn't have been awarded that job. But what it allowed me to do is start making management leadership mistakes very early. So I've been making mistakes for a very long time now, and I like to think that I can learn from every one of them. But yeah, I think clearly just being continually curious around how can you do it better? How do others? I mean, congratulations on creating this podcast, this environment to talk about leadership, because for anybody who's tuning in and just listening and either agreeing or disagreeing with what we're saying, it's forcing them to have a moment of reflection around how they operate in their business as a leader, and maybe bring some of that into question and just make some fine improvements here and there. So being curious, being self-reflective, and I mean there's bucketfuls of material and advice, whether it's in books or podcasts, so I think more than ever before you've got really rich content that you can dip in and out of and go away and try in your business. Some of it may work, it may fit with you and who you are, some of it may not, but I would say just it's that constant ambition to think, I will get better at this. I can be a better leader, because I firmly believe that it's within everybody's gift to be a leader. You've just got to you've got to have the right mindset, the right set of values, and then the right work ethic.
Well done. My mate in Somerset was mentioning Neil is just dialed in, and he says, talk about my foreman Mark. So with Neil, he had a young man who wanted to progress, and as Neil and I've talked about, and as we all know, you can't learn leadership online, and you can to a degree in a classroom to a degree, but you've got to actually experience it. So what Neil found was that if with this foreman, before he was a foreman, he bigged him up. He gave him responsibility. Right, Mark, this time today you're going to be looking after the harvesting team. It's a big cider operation. Just get on with it and see how you go. And he would set him tasks that if there was ever a mistake, it was always above the waterline, but he would always learn. And Mark would come back to the boss Neil with any suggestion, and they would have a catch up at the, and slowly he came back to Neil less and less because he gained the confidence. He gained the confidence, and within a 6-month period, he became foreman of the whole business, and also got a pay rise on the back of that. So I suppose in some respects, Ben, it's about being brave as a leader with your team. What's that expression? Let go to grow. Don't delegate, but don't abdicate. Just test them, and if they make the mistake, they'll make a mistake, but they won't make it again, will they, Ben?
No, and I think this is one of the most challenging areas of leadership. How do you create more leaders? And I again made howling mistakes in this regard, and some recently. But my reflections on those mistakes are that, number one, so we're all used to working within guardrails, within parameters. That's from being a child. Your parents typically set some parameters that we're encouraged to not go beyond, because there's some pretty unpleasant consequences if you go beyond the parameters. Yeah, and that's no different when you start to move into adult life. We have laws of the land that provide those parameters. But in the work environment, depending on the way that any organization is led, sometimes those parameters can be very narrow. This is exactly how you carry out this process. It's written down. Don't deviate from it. Of course, when you're trying to create leaders, and leaders that have their own personalities, their nuanced values, personal values, they've got to be allowed to do it in a way that makes sense for them. And I think the challenge for any leader that's looking to develop succession or additional more leadership within the business is to still have those parameters, those guardrails, but allow them to be ideally as wide as possible, without you coming back to what you said, Max. Somebody actually going under the waterline. But that's difficult. It really is, because standing back and watching people make mistakes that hurt them, potentially hurt the business a bit, and allowing it all to happen, but being there as your friend is and was, to support and pick that person back up again, and just ask some open questions around what, just teasing out the lessons, ensuring it doesn't happen again. That's difficult. That's difficult, especially when it's your own business, it's your own skin in the game. That adds another dynamic to it.
And here's the tricky one. The best thing about running a business is employing people. The worst thing about running a business is employing people. What do you do when you've got a situation where you just don't think it's going to work, and actually this individual is a negative individual for the business? Mm. Is it just best to be professional and grown up about it and remove them and do it professionally, so they can find their own way, in the hope that you find someone else, or do you just continue with them? What would your advice be, Ben?
No, I mean, I think if you're hurting as a manager and leader because of underperformance or a poor cultural fit within your business, then you can be certain that the individual's hurting in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And so I think as a leader, not dealing with that is pretty cruel. Because if you've got an individual in your team that's really uncomfortable and you ignore that, then I mean, that's not a great human trait. So as hard as that conversation can be, if managed correctly, if managed with humility and backed up with the with evidence of what you're seeing in terms of performance or cultural mismatches, then generally there's a feeling of relief after that conversation's taken place. But yeah, there's no doubt about it. Those conversations going into them can feel pretty challenging, but best have them, and especially if it relates to a manager, because a manager in pain, a manager that's not feeling great about the role, will be having a negative impact, you can be sure, upon those who are creating the ultimate value in the business, those at the coalface.
Yeah, well done. Great advice.
Max, if I can just, because we touched about earlier about, how rewarding employees and stuff like that. One of the reasons why I was very keen to get Ben on here is and how you've transformed the business. So you've built up this amazing business, and then at some point you thought, and actually said, I want to change this, and now it's an employee ownership business. So tell us a bit exactly what does that actually mean, and how did that come about, and a bit of the background on that, and then we'll delve into that.
Okay, so I mean, in summary, employee ownership in this day and age means a transfer of the shares into a vehicle, a trust company, and that's, for any of the listeners that are familiar with trusts and how they operate, this is exactly the same. You're transferring an asset into this wrapper, which is in the world of employee ownership is a trust company, and those shares are held there for the benefit of the employees of the trading business. So any employee or employees in our case that have been with the business for over 6 months, that have got through their induction period, automatically, without any paper changing hands, automatically become a beneficiary of the trust. Now, what benefits, you might ask, do the team enjoy? Well, today the government allow a distribution of profit from within the trading company of up to £3,600 a year. I think that number's correct. So free of income tax. So that's beneficiary number one. Benefit number two is that should the business be sold again, then the proceeds of that sale, less any debt, any costs of that sale, will be distributed equally amongst the team, assuming there are no other shareholders in place. So, albeit there are no real share certificates in terms of benefiting from owning a business, some of those benefits are very real. But the one thing that very few employee-owned businesses have actually been sold again, because that's not the idea.
Yep.
And so I think one of the biggest benefits, and this is something that we talked a lot to the Horizon team about, is around job security. We've seen, and I briefly talked about my own experience of selling a business to trade. It can be incredibly disruptive. The culture can be changed, and therefore, what was a good job can suddenly become not such a good job when there is a transition of ownership. And I think with employee ownership, that transition, when it's done well, can be much smoother, and therefore, less negative on the wider team. So that's a bit about employee ownership. Isaac, there was another part to that question that
how did you arrive at that? So you were building this business, and how?
Yes, I think we were maybe 14 years into Horizon. Horizon, from 2009 onwards, was owned equally by two of us, and by two people. So my business partner and I had a conversation back in 2019, and you're recognizing that we've got young children, we've got your responsibilities away from the business that we needed to ensure could be paid for. And at that point, we built a sizable organization that carried some value. So we were comparing our personal net worth versus the value of the business. It was completely out of kilter. So the right thing for our families was to try and balance that out somewhat. So that triggered the conversation about trying to release some value. And we did explore a number of options, but the employee ownership route made sense for so many reasons. One, because we wanted to remain part of the business. Two, because we're really keen to leave a legacy, having seen a brand, a culture, an organization be wiped out really quite quickly in the last business. And thirdly, employee ownership felt right for the culture of our business. It's always been a very people-focused organization, high engagement levels. We were lucky enough to attract some amazing people over the years to contribute to our mission, and we owed it to them to ensure that culture, that mission lives on, and so yeah, it fitted well.
There's that standard quote that's 70, and I nearly said it in the green room, Ben, but I knew it was going to come up. 75% of all M&A transactions in the UK culturally don't work after a year, 18-month period, and it feels like what you've done. It's an unusual step, but it works very well. Isaac, do you want to just go for that question from Miles?
So, sorry, I haven't seen that, but I'm just thinking about in farming, succession is such a big issue. So I think this is just amazing. Right, and from Miles, Ben, transferring the business into employee ownership is a transaction. How important was culture to the transition, and how did employee ownership change it? So how did the culture in the business change once got transferred? And what approaches should business leaders have when they do this? Thanks, Miles.
Good question, Miles. Thank you. So we were confident going into the transition over to employee ownership that, from a cultural perspective, employee engagement perspective, we were in a really good space. I was so proud that in 2022 we were awarded the top 100 mid-size, or we were in the list of top 100 mid-size businesses to work for. So thrilled to bits with that. So we badged our mission in terms of culture around the transition to employee ownership as don't cock it up. So that forced us to have numerous conversations with people who had already transitioned their business into employee ownership, and really try and tease out lessons learned so that we didn't cock it up. And one example of what came out of those conversations was, like, don't tell the team, ask the team, and do that in advance. Because I have met people who've told the team once they've bought the company, and if you think of in day-to-day life, if I'm going to sell you something, I'm going to ask if you'd like to buy it before we get into the nitty-gritty of the transaction. And so it's no different in employee ownership, albeit no money's changing hands. If you're going to sell something, the very least you can do is ask the person buying it if they want to, if they're going to support this. So that's one example of many that we picked up from those conversations. And
did you have some employees that said, actually, you know what? No, I don't want to buy it, and I'm going to go elsewhere?
Thankfully, no. We were told that you'd maybe find 20% that were quite skeptical. Maybe distrusted the model. You get 20% that were advocates, real promoters, and then you'd see this 60% in the middle that would be, okay, well, what's it really mean to me? Will my day-to-day job be affected? No. Well, I'm all right with it then. Is it still the same guys leading the business? Yeah, same team. Yeah, I'm fine with it then. And we surveyed the team since transitioning, and as part of the ongoing engagement surveys, we asked the question, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much more do you feel like an owner of the business than you once did? And the scoring's improved slightly, but it's not like everybody thinks. I own Horizon Platforms, so we've not got to that, which is fine.
And I've got a question here from George saying, somebody that's only just joined and only been there for 6 months or a year compared to some of the longer term staffs. And there is a difference in the share allocation?
So no, quite. I mean, it can be set up that way. But we set it up as once you've been in the business for 6 months, so you through your induction or probationary period, should I say, then you automatically become a beneficiary of the trust, and your share is equal to everyone else's. Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting model for farming. There are many boxes that need to be ticked for employee ownership to be available for an organisation. So I think an organisation's got to have a ratio of a certain ratio of owners versus employees. So if let's say it was just an entire family that owned the business equally amongst them, wanted to just become employee owned, that's not allowable. But for certain sizes of business, then farming businesses, then it could be a really interesting option, especially, I guess, with the unfortunate changes in inheritance tax.
Mm-hmm. I've got a question back in from Somerset. Ben, who do you go to for advice? So it's great that we've got you as what you do, but who do you go for? Who's your critical friend? And I hope I'm not crossing the line here, but who mentors you?
So I've been really lucky to I've been introduced to people throughout my career that typically older than me, more experienced than me, in all in different sectors, in different leadership positions, and so I'm lucky. I've got a reasonable network and a good pool of people that I trust. So it very much depends what the issue is, what problem I'm trying to solve. So I've been lucky enough to have a semi-official mentor for a long time, who is one of the non-exec directors of Horizon Platforms. But sometimes they're not the right person to go to, because we go back to sometimes it's not helpful to have somebody tell you exactly what to do. I've found periodically a formal business coach really helpful.
Wow.
And that coaching style is very different to being told what to do. That coaching style is helping you unlock parts of your brain that you're just struggling to unlock yourself. So the resolution to the problem's in there. It's in there. It's just for whatever reason your thinking is particularly blocked. So I think there's definite place for a mentor and coach, and they offer two different levels of support to leaders.
Ben, thank you. And just to set your scenario, because we see this time and time again on these broadcasts, and also with the Agri Leader Forum conferences. If you've got this family or large scale farming business that I intimated earlier, and there's the younger generation coming through, and everything is okay, the business is okay, but this younger individual wants to take it through to the next stage, and they might have been to Ag University, or but they want more. What would your advice be as to what they should do in the respect of their coaching to be more curious? It's great. What I loved about what you said is you don't have just a one mentor that does everything. It feels like if you've got a financial conundrum, you've got a contact over here. If you've got a logistics conundrum, you've got a contact over there. If you've got a people conundrum, what would your advice be for that individual who's looking to progress the farm but can't find the solution from within the farm? What would you advise them to do to go out to get that defined advice? What would your advice be?
Well, back in my days as the managing director of Horizon Platforms, I took huge value from working with non-executive directors on the board of that company. We had one guy who chaired the board who had a good understanding of the sector, but another guy that came from safety product supply and manufacturing. So I'd no experience in the sector whatsoever, but added an equal amount of value as to the guy who did. And from the feedback I received from my colleagues at Bell Lighting, I've no experience in the manufacturing of light fittings, but the feedback I receive on my contribution to that business, £30 million lighting manufacturing company, is positive around the challenges that you highlight there, Max. It's not industry specific. It's their business challenges, and they're typically the same types of challenges that all businesses, regardless of sector, are battling week in, week out. So I think the role of a non-exec director or board advisor was originally set up to support the publicly listed businesses. But I think if you get the right personality fit, right cultural fit, there's a huge opportunity for SMEs to leverage expertise that are on offer on a non-exec basis. So that would be something I would be encouraging the leaders of farms to be considering.
Ben, thank you. Isaac, we're rapidly running out of time. Do you want to not wrap up for us? But have you got any takeaways, Isaac?
So I told you Ben is going to be good tonight, Max, and it's just been such an inspiring chat with you. I've got one quick question from Rachel's and asking if they, as a farm, want to look at this. What's the first step? Where should they start looking? Is there any advice out there
for
employee ownership?
Employee ownership. Thank you. So the Employee Ownership Association would be the first place to start. Their website has some really in-depth content. From my experiences, they're great people. They run a fantastic conference. I think over 600 people in attendance on an annual basis, where you not only hear from people who successfully transition their businesses into employee ownership, but from a networking perspective, that will be hugely valuable. But there are advisors that again are a very useful connection. So we use Martin Cooper at RSM to administer our deal. He was excellent. He was the same guy who transitioned Richer Sounds into employee ownership, a brand that I'm sure many listeners will be familiar with. One of the biggest employee ownership deals at the time. So I think Employee Ownership Association first, but again, reaching out to the likes of RSM and others, and pinching an hour of their time would be hugely valuable.
Brilliant, thank you. I do think this could be a valuable tool in the arsenal where succession or inheritance and all of those kind of things are a thorny issue. So thank you very much for sharing your time this morning with us, Ben. From me, and if you've enjoyed this, go and have a look at the other things that we do at AgriLeader. The whole idea around the program is for you to better lead your team, yourself, your business, and if you can sort out some of the thorny issues around recruitment and retention, staff management, so it just gives you more time to think and on your strategy. But it's an absolutely brilliant session, Ben. Thank you very much.
Very welcome.
Guys, just from my side, I loved what he said, Ben. It's so simple, but so few of us actually do it. Don't tell the team, ask the team. Yeah. Don't tell the team, ask the team. And Neil from Somerset says, Ben, you are the Alex Ferguson of your sectors. which is hilarious when you're a rugby fan. But Ben, you brought in the football analogy, so you're gonna have to live with that. Ben, we hope you.
The Rusty Erasmus of rugby, Ben.
And Ben, write that book. Write that book and stick it into an audiobook. I think you'd. That's our challenge for myself and Isaac. If this is okay, Isaac, write that book about your journey so that we can all learn from it. Especially when we're all running around to hear it on an audiobook. I think would be amazing. We double dare you, Ben. Write that book.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your encouragement. Let's see.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you, Isaac.
Thank you.